So when it comes to TNA Impact crowd reactions anywhere in the world, once you go into the UK, you never want to go back to the US. Hey, what's up and how's it going, all MRBers? I'm Mike McRock for the McRock and Bolt Wrestling Review Show, and we just saw TNA Impact Wrestling from the UK, and the show kicked off with Dixie Carter and Magnus coming out, and Magnus calls out MVP because he has something to say, and after that MVP came out and Magnus told him that we accept the challenge of the 4-on-4 match, and I like how those two were playing off each other back and forth. Both guys were really selling the segment very well. Magnus taking the heat, and MVP, his rebuttal to what Magnus was saying about insulting MVP was pretty much gold. It was laughable. It was really enjoyable to see these two guys interact in the ring, and I also like Dixie Carter did not even say a word at all, and I think if she spoke a single word, it would just completely ruin the first segment. And the show continues to go on with the whole idea of the 4-on-4 match, and Magnus says that he will not be the team captain because he has bigger fish to fry, and that he has to face Samoa Joe, and he's pretty much, you know, looking past Gunner, and MVP talks about that to him, and while this whole first segment was escalating, Magnus told MVP that I will make you my, and MVP is like, don't you say it, don't you say that word, and he said the word, and those two went at it, and I thought that was a good, solid way to kick off Impact Wrestling. And to me, when TNA sells a good first segment, pretty much tells me that this is going to be a good show. Yeah, and for that reason, you have to have that strong first segment and a lasting good segment at the end, and I think those two worked pretty well. To me, that made the most out of this show. Moving on, now after all that happened, the Wolves come out, and basically all hell breaks loose. You have EC3, Rockstar Spud. Well, actually, it was just EC3 that pretty much came out and tried to save Magnus, and then the American Wolves came out. They were about to go 2-on-1 on EC3, and Magnus was there with them, and he just shoves them and runs off. Of course, TNA making him look like the weak champion, so there's no surprise there. And basically, this was a 2-on-1 attack from the Wolves on EC3. And after that, EC3 got frustrated, saw Magnus backstage, and basically just yelled at him, and talking about, oh, why didn't you have my back, and stuff like that, etc., etc. So and overall, I thought, you know, teasing more tension, to me, is pretty much building up. I'm wondering if TNA is going to go in that direction, where someone turns babyface, if they do have a rivalry between these two guys. It just don't feel right at this point in time, because Magnus is going to be facing Samoa Joe at Lockdown, and there's this whole idea of Bobby Roode turning face, and there's also an idea of James Storm turning heel, or Gunner turning heel, one of those two. So I think to me, no one should turn heel, and just have that jealousy build up and escalate, but not go anywhere with it. That's what I think should happen in the direction that TNA is going with EC3 and Magnus. Just let it go so far, but then just don't do anything after it. After that, we saw Samoa Joe come out and he cut a promo and he basically said he wants to get into a fight instead of standing out in the back waiting for his championship match. Who does he get? The Bromans and Zima Ion. And Joe said, I will face all three of you when they had him surrounded. And this was basically Samoa Joe squashing these three guys. But what I liked about this match was that it was very well done. You had the Bromance and Zima Ion have their way with Samoa Joe for a while before Samoa Joe got back and started beating up on all three guys. So I think that it was a good way to establish Samoa Joe as that big guy, that intense force that is just unstoppable. And they've done a tremendous job with Samoa Joe. The only issue I have with it is that for some reason TNA is making the tag team champions look weak, and I can understand establishing Samoa Joe as that monster. But the issue I have with is that the Bromans can't beat one guy in a 3-on-1 handicap match. Come on. But I do understand that, TNA wants to establish Samoa Joe as that monster that you just can't go over. You just can't. Anyway, moving on. Now, one of my favorite highlights of this show was the Samuel Shaw and Christy Hemme saga. First, we got to see a segment where Christy Hemme was talking to this, this crew guy or this guy behind the scenes, and she goes off camera, and then Samuel Shaw from behind slowly walks up and puts a sleeper hold on this guy and just starts beating the crap out of him. And after that, we saw a segment where, Samuel Shaw looking at Mr. Anderson and Christy Hemme talking and then walking away, and then Jeremy Borash is talking to this gut check guy who won a contest, but then all of a sudden Samuel Shaw attacks Anderson and also hitting Gail Kim as well. To me, the logical fail out of that is Samuel Shaw not watching the show. I mean, they've done it with Christy Hemme with the storyline because of Samuel Shaw's obsession with Christy Hemme, and you're thinking that Christy Hemme doesn't watch her own show and they're making her look stupid. But they actually played on that the week after, so I can understand that. But doesn't Samuel Shaw watch this show either? Because with the whole rivalry with Bully Ray and Mr. Anderson was showing the camera guy his twins. And we all know that he has a wife as well. Bully Ray mentions about the Mr. Anderson's wife. So wouldn't Samuel Shaw know that Anderson already has a wife and kids and is not in any way flirting with Christy Hemme? Failed TNA. But what I do like is how they're building up Samuel Shaw, because after that Samuel Shaw takes Christy Hemme and he lays her on the table and he says, "Don't worry, Christy, Samuel has it all under control." And then he looks up at the camera and he says, "Hey." And I'm like, "Run, camera guy, run. You're about to get your ass whooped." And to me, this whole thing with Christy Hemme and Samuel Shaw is working. It has that creepy and disturbing vibe. And like I said, it's working with Samuel Shaw. The only thing I hope for one day is for Samuel Shaw to actually be that creepy, disturbing guy in the ring. That's what I hope going forth in his career in TNA Impact Wrestling. Also on the show, we saw Bobby Roode in the backstage segment talking to James Storm, talking about how those two started in the business and the politics, etc., etc. I will get to more Bobby Roode later on, and I like how James Storm was pretty much motivating Bobby Roode as well as Gunner afterwards, as well in a backstage segment, saying that you got this match, this is your night. And I like that, that James Storm is playing the psychologist, motivating pretty much everyone. He's motivating Gunner, he's motivating Bobby Roode, and I'm wondering where is this going to go when it comes to James Storm, and I'll get to that later on. Also, we saw Madison Rayne versus Gail Kim in a knockout street fight match, and to me, this match just feels like it's a throw-in. It's a throw-in stipulation, and why should I care about this match? Because Madison Rayne turns face and attacks Gail Kim for no apparent reason. And there's tension building, but we never got that legit answer, so why should I care about this rivalry? Can someone answer me that, please? But what I do like is the physicality of this match. This was a hardcore, knockout street fight. This was brutal. I like the actual stuff that's happening in the ring between these two knockouts. That I did enjoy. But what I don't like is how they're building up this rivalry with Madison Rayne and Gail Kim. I'm not caring about this, and what TNA should do is bring in new knockouts instead of bringing in old knockouts. To me, that's another logic fail that TNA has been doing. But to me, what kind of did made up for it was the actual in-ring work for this match. And I'll just leave it at that. Moving on, we get to Bobby Roode, and now so he has this story going on with him. He has he's been down. He's been sick and tired of the politics that's been going on in TNA, and he comes out and he talks about how Impact is my home. And he's talking about living up to my hopes and dreams, one day being a wrestler, one day being a champ. And I like how he was passionate throughout that entire thing. And he also mentioned that there's things in his career that he's not proud of, about ruining friendships and being the only guy in the locker room that feels that he's alone and no one is coming up to talk to him and stuff like that. He's pretty much being that loner guy that that it just don't feel right for himself. So I love where they're going with this. And then Dixie, and pretty much now before we get to Dixie, Bobby Roode mentions that this is my last night at TNA, and he goes on to say that I just can't do it anymore. And Dixie Carter comes out and basically tells him that I'm the one that makes that call, and I'm the one that tells you when to leave. That's not your call. That's not your decision to make, Bobby Roode. And goes on and talks about the guys that Bobby Roode says that were done wrong by Dixie Carter. Guys like Sting, AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy. And that basically what happens is that Dixie sort of apologizes to Bobby Roode, and they talk about lockdown, the 4-on-4. Dixie wants Bobby Roode to be team captain, and if so, Dixie Carter will give Bobby Roode 10% ownership. And I like how she hesitated when she was about to say that. The little things matter. I thought Dixie Carter on the microphone was actually pretty good. It was better than last week. And to me, the 10% ownership versus a title shot feels more important. So it makes sense. It makes perfect sense for Bobby Roode to accept And to me, this is foreshadowing of Bobby Roode screwing over Dixie Carter. It seems to be going that way. Now, you could go the route of Bobby Roode signing a contract before the lethal Lockdown match with MVP, giving up his 10% ownership and then screwing Dixie Carter. You can go that route. And to me, that would be an understandable situation, a understandable scenario. And I'm interested to see where this is going to go for Bobby Roode. Even though it feels predictable, slowly he's turning face. And at Lethal Lockdown, something has to give. And I like how they're leaving that open. And to me, there's actually a couple of things I like from this show that is making me excited to see next week's show. And you'll see what I mean. Up next, we got the Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, the Bad Influence, taking on the Wolves. They're not known as the American Wolves, but they're known as the Wolves in TNA. And to me, this was a better way to establish the Wolves, because last week we saw them in a 3-on-3 match and they didn't really showcase Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards all that much. They were only in the ring for a few minutes, and we never got to see a lot from them. We never got to see their full potential. But now, on this week's episode of TNA, we got to see that. We got to see tag team maneuvers from the Wolves, and they look great. They feel like a tag team. Both guys wearing the same attire. And I love how they worked with Bad Influence. To me, that was a well done match. No complaints about it. What happened was that the American Wolves went over Bad Influence. And before we saw that match, we saw Bobby Roode talk to Bad Influence. And he said that, hey, if you want to be on my team, you have to earn it. It's another sign of Bobby Roode slowly turning face. After that, we get a new Will of the Wisp promo. Yeah, I'm not going to do that impersonation. I suck at it. Anyway, like I said, about leaving things wanting for more, next week we will see Bobby Roode versus MVP. Next week, Team Captain versus Team Captain. That would be interesting to see. And we get to the main event match. I think this was a good way to close out. It was Magnus cashing in his briefcase for a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship against Magnus. Gunner cashing in his title shot against Magnus for the World Heavyweight Championship. And to me, going into this match, I just can't see Magnus lose his title. And I also can't see Gunner losing clean. To me, that would really drop his momentum. So I love how this show ended. And what happened was that they have the match. It was a great match, and to me, there's one thing that stood out, and I didn't know if they made it no disqualification or no count out. It was interesting because we saw all the guys that came in and tried to interfere in the match, but they all got out of the ring and worked their way up to the ramp. So that was pretty smart. I was like, oh no, not another train wreck. Of course, I love that they played it safe, and I love that didn't happen. What happened was that we saw Ethan Carter come out, and as well as Rockstar Spud and the Bromans and the Wolves and James Storm. And to me, Ethan Carter coming out and saving Magnus? This is the same guy earlier on the show having a argument with Magnus about, yeah, I got your back, being sarcastic, and where were you, and stuff like that. This is the same guy that was arguing with Magnus earlier on the show? Come on, TNA. Where's your common sense? Honest to God, another logic fail. For the love of God, what do you... Why? Why are you making EC3 look stupid? Same thing with Samuel Shaw. Anyway, moving on. What happened at the end when Gunner was about to hit his big diving headbutt on Magnus the second time? You know, we saw James Storm in the ring, and he was chasing around Rockstar Spud, and he got in the ring. He was getting the crowd all riled up, and Gunner was about to hit his move, and then super kick. And I'm curious to see where they're going to go with this, with James Storm turning heel, turning on Gunner, costing him the World Heavyweight Championship, because James Storm has that tag team title briefcase, and knowing that before this even happened, that we were going to see a tag team title shot. So why would James Storm turn on Gunner now, knowing that he has that tag team title briefcase? I'm interested to see what spin TNA is going to put on this and see where the story's going to go. I'm ready for his explanation. I'm ready for James Storm's explanation. And you talk about leaving me wanting for more. TNA has done just that. And overall, I thought the show, besides the logic fails, was a great show. I would give it an 8 out of 10. And if you saw the show, what did you think about it? Comment below and let me know. While you're at it, you can hit that very subscribe button below this video. You can also follow MRB Wrestling on Twitter and Make Rock and Bolt Wrestling Reviews on Facebook. And on a final note, get plenty of rest and always do your best.